election observation as well. So, would you mind to share a brief observation regarding your final report?
We really congratulate the Bangladeshi authorities and Bangladeshi people for having really a credible participatory election, and we were part of that. We weren't involved in the election struggles or campaigns, but we were observing, and we are producing not just the report of what we have observed, but also recommendations what could be improved, and largely saying, of course, those elections in Bangladesh with all their possible challenges were conducted according to international standards. And in that sense, we are really happy to have cooperated also with the Electoral Commission, who was very open and transparent, because of course that was a challenge for the country, which since 2008 at least haven't had any really credible and competitive and participatory elections. As for our recommendations, they touch upon many different issues. This is regarding the legal framework, which could be improved, especially when dealing with campaign finance, where there is a regulation, but it's not always clear and not always enforced. And this touches also upon the question of the participation of women, where to my mind Bangladesh should follow more its own obligations regarding the Women's Convention, which the country has ratified, but also the internal processes, especially in the political parties. The representation of women should be strengthened. But there are also many other more technical issues. We, for example, were also commending the fact that the postal voting was introduced and also used on such a large scale. At the same time, there are small technical details that could be improved, but the general assessment is positive. Without any doubt, because we really see this is an important step for the Bangladeshi nation and democracy to move forward after a really legitimate parliament is elected, which is also starting to really make its own policies.
We had a couple of questions from the opposition side, who is belonging right now, the opposition leader. They mentioned there was some election engineering, especially in Dhaka city, like Dhaka in 15. So did you find any kind of evidence?
Well, you can read the report, and we have been really following the process, how the voting and the counting of votes was organized. But again, what is important is really to have a transparent process. If there are any allegations or any possible suggestions of some irregularities taking place, there must be a clear pathway, a clear legal pathway for the Bangladeshi citizens to contest those issues in a neutral, impartial process. We know that there have been such appeals after the elections, and they are moving forward. And if again, this is what I am telling in each and every country I am visiting and observing the elections, is it's very much up to the Bangladeshi citizens, if they really observe something like that, to move forward, to submit those appeals, and after that the court is going to make a decision. So in that sense, I think that the situation has undoubtedly improved here in this country.
And also mainstream media, and also about the minority people. Do you have any significant observation?
Let me just mention a few things. Regarding the mainstream media, I think that the safety of journalists is an issue all over the world. And this, of course, also applies to Bangladesh, where we have also seen, well, harassment and attacks. I think this is really an important issue, the safety of journalists to be improved, especially regarding also issues like self-censorship, which is unfortunately spread in many countries. But as for the social media, our suggestion is to work also together with the European Union, because our recommendations are basically also possible fields of cooperation between the EU and Bangladesh, and social media platforms is one of those spheres where the EU has, well, struggled in order to make those platforms accountable, to avoid disinformation, to avoid fake news being spread. And this is, well, what we have observed here in Bangladesh, but in order also in many other countries, but well, in order to be able to talk to those big platforms like Meta, like Google, like TikTok, you have to have a clear common vision. What do you want to achieve, and also a clear domestic regulation. And in that sense, of course, we are struggling with that in Europe, and we invite you to join that struggle, because this is a problem for democracies all over the world. And the third question was about the minorities and marginalized groups. Yes, this is also mentioned as there are no formal hurdles for them to participate, but some of the organizations we have met and talked to have expressed certain fears and concerns about whether minorities and religious groups are allowed to participate on the equal basis. So this is really an issue to be dealt with, and we are paying a lot of attention to it.
So then, to move forward about the democratic process, so would you mind to share that 6 points in brief?
Well, I'm afraid that I won't be able to explain them all in detail, but the main points are, just as I said, first of all, the legislation. There are some loopholes we have identified, and we will share that information also with the authorities. These loopholes must be closed. This applies to many different stages of the process, for example, candidate registration, for example, voter registration, and so on and so forth. This is very much a big emphasis is being made on women's participation, because we see this really as a challenge for the Bangladeshi democracy. We think this is not just a domestic but also an international issue, because you have committed to be part of the Women's Convention to prevent any discrimination of women from the public life. This is also the issue we just mentioned of the campaign finance, which is important. This is also the issue of the social media, because we all know that this is, again, there is no absolute solution which would apply for each and every country equally, but this is a problem we are struggling with in all the democratic countries, and also Bangladesh, I think, should join this battle, to make the social media space really safe and democratic. These are the main suggestions. There we are making suggestions and recommendations also on other issues. For example, the postal vote. We really appreciate the fact that there is a postal vote available. On the other hand, of course, this postal voting, which is really good, could be also expanded to some other groups inside the country. For example, people with disabilities and students, for example, internally displaced persons, and so there are multiple recommendations, but again, just as I said in the press conference, there is no such thing as a crystal clear democracy. All democracies, in the world have their own small and bigger problems. We really appreciate the process, how the elections were run here in Bangladesh, and we really congratulate the country with the new beginning of the democratic development, and we really see Bangladesh as an important partner, not just well, politically, but also economically, first of all, and also, of course, on many different other issues. And in that sense, again, we are well, just making some notes what we have observed. We haven't been playing for this or that party. We have really observed as a process.
Well, and then, as we are looking forward to the next election as well, so will you support that election as well?
Yeah. First of all, I want to express my sincere gratitude to Bangladeshi people for your reception, because we were really enjoying your warmth and openness and hospitality. This is not just about the state institutions that were really open and nice towards our mission, but also by the Bangladeshi citizens in all possible contexts. We met them all across the country, and all of our observers were really happy to be here and to do this work. As for the future, I think that democracies have to cooperate, especially democracies that have the rule-of-based political orders, and in that sense we are really looking in Europe towards having more intense cooperation with Bangladesh. But as for the newly elected parliament, and of course we know that democratic life is sometimes very tedious and very vibrant and very noisy and so on and so forth. In democracies, people have to be patient as well, because you might not get the results you wanted immediately, but the good thing for democracy is that it's good in the long run, because the country can make its own decisions, to make its own policies, to correct its own mistakes. This is what democracy is about. So this is the lengthy but very sure and inclusive path towards prosperity and towards good life.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. Good.